is there any team, we'll start with the team that you think is going to be looking to cash in on teams that are really looking to make an aggressive push?
So I think it is right now a seller's market. So if you have a team, you have players that you're willing to trade, you can get more than what you normally get. And usually it's I think a seller's market anyway at the deadline.
Yeah.
But I think it's even more so. So you start there. I think the Atlanta, if they're really looking at it closely, they have four starters on the injury list. They got to sell. They don't have a lot to sell because a lot of controllable pieces and some of those contracts that they have. You'd be selling low. So we'll see. It might be limited. They may have some relievers they may move. Uh, we talked about the Orioles. We have to wait and see. But right now, they're trending. They're 9 games under 500, and they're 7.5 out. If they in 3 weeks, if they're still 9 or 10 games under 500, I expect that they would be sellers. They have a lot of interest in their players. Cleveland is the team most recently that's gone on this tailspin that
Yeah.
they would have some guys for sure to potentially move. Now it's limited to on that part. I think the final team and the one that everybody is keeping an eye on is the Diamondbacks. They're the ones that have a really good team. Nobody wants to play them when they're healthy, completely healthy. It's a really good team when they're healthy, but they're constantly injured. They just had another injury to their bullpen last night
Mm.
in Shelby Miller. So it's like they have a number of starters that have been injured. They've had Marte and Corbin Carroll, although Carroll's back. So they're the team, I think, the biggest wild card because they could move two really good starters. They can move a bullpen piece. They can move a power hitting third baseman and Suarez. They have a lot of talent that they can move really fast.
Yeah. This is why it's a fascinating conversation, right? Because you're sitting there going like, man, like this makes sense. Well, we're on it. We've been struggling. And I heard Arizona, they came out and said earlier, hey, we're looking to be aggressive.
Right.
Problem is, like this was earlier before all of like the full injuries, but they were still down Corbin and Eduardo Rodriguez. And they also play in the National League West where the Dodgers are humming. The
Right.
Padres are pretty good. The Giants, I know, have been a little bit up and down, but they're a really good team. Like you're fighting to be the fourth best in the National League West, and seeing how the NL Central now is this strong division all of a sudden, with every team, even the Pirates are playing better baseball down the stretch here. It's going to be a more challenging road for them to make the wild card, but they definitely have some pieces to go after, or they have some pieces to sell, and for teams to go after. Then Jim, like who would be a couple players then if it's not just a team that you're really just curious about? Like the one that always that people want to know is like, what the hell are the Marlins going to do with Sandy down
Right.
there in Miami? That they are starting to turn a corner, maybe, and they want to look the next year. He has one of the most friendly team deals of any starter that has ace potential. But is there a list of guys that you're really eyeing?
Yes.
As we get closer, yeah, go ahead. Let me hear
Well,
him.
yeah, I think Sandy's the first one. They also have another really good starter who's pitched very well lately in Edward Cabrera that
Oh
has
gosh.
been available. A couple years ago, you could have gotten him when he was, I think in his first year, and he had some injuries, but he's pitching, as he's pitching so well. So those two guys in particular, Arizona with Zach Gallen, who's going to be a free agent, and Merrill Kelly, who's also going to be a free agent. Those two starters would be, that you could get a lot for out there. So I'm curious on that front. I think, I mentioned Suarez at third base. Like there's about five teams that could use a third baseman. The Cubs, Seattle, Houston, just off the top of my head, the Mets. They could use a third baseman. I think the Rangers are kind of interesting to take a look at. Somebody might have interest in Marcus Simeon, even though there's a little bit of money on that contract. If the Rangers pick some of that up, he's been swinging the bat really well. That's a a big name that is getting older in his mid to late 30s. So I'm kind of curious where that one goes. Somebody had asked me today about Ronald Acuna Jr. They saw his name mentioned somewhere. I had not seen it mentioned. That one felt like it was a made up kind of clickbait. Don't fall for the headline type of
Yeah.
deal. because he's one of the best, still one of the best players, and he's under one of the best contracts. I can't see that Braves doing that. So those are some of the ones. I would say Emmanuel Clase with the Guardians. You know, he's one of the best
Ooh.
closers. His name gets mentioned a lot. Has over the last like winter, even last year's deadline, his name got mentioned. Who else? Anybody else that? I mean, those are main names. You know, I'm just double checking to make sure I got a little list that I have
Yeah, you're not hearing
with
Felix
me.
Bautista, right? You're not hearing Felix Bautista,
I'm
are
not.
you?
I am not
Okay.
hearing Felix Batista. You know, and you know we could talk about that for a second because you know there are a lot of people that have suggested that they should, and I'm not sitting here today and telling and saying, well, uh, you know, if they got blown away with a deal that they couldn't and wouldn't do it. I mean, I think you'd have to give serious consideration to it. But you know, he's one of the best closers in the sport, and he's still really, in terms of the salary, extremely low, controllable for a couple more years. And
Yeah.
as soon as you trade him, you got to replace him next year, and that cost is going to be 60, 70, 80 million dollars, something along those lines. So why would you do that if you're the Orioles? If you're trying to manage your payroll properly, you need to pump it into starting pitching, you know, next year and some extra bullpen guys. Why pump it into a closer? You have one of the best out there. So I would not move him, and I have not heard his name at all.
Well, good, because I'm right there with you where I know no one is truly off limits. You know, there's no deal that you wouldn't, you know, couldn't be out there that couldn't persuade you. Now I'd argue there are some players like, you know, I ain't trading Gunnar Henderson for anything. I'm not trading Jackson Holiday for anything. Heck, I mean, I know he's a prospect. I wouldn't trade Sam Basayo for
Mm,
anything because he's very close. And he's
yeah,
going to make his debut here, whether it's later in this year or in the future. But you're looking at a guy that bat wise, gosh, it is scary good what he's
mhm,
showing his potential to be at the plate. But then one team we hadn't talked about, like the Pirates, like where do you
yeah,
look at them? I know Brian Reynolds, no trade clause, right, and has the choice to do what he wants to do. Do you think the Pirates move any of their arms because they do need some more offense, but they do have some really, really good pitchers that even if they've underperformed a little bit,
yeah,
right? Like Mitch Keller's a guy that's underperformed, but very talented.
sure.
Falter, another guy. Paul Skeens ain't going anywhere. I that's
Mhm.
as we say, too ludicrous, Jim. But do you think the Pirates get in this mix at all with some of these arms?
I do, Ryan. I think that you know Keller's a really good name. His name has been mentioned recently. You know, he's a really solid starter. So is Bailey Falter. Andrew Heaney is a guy that's been traded a couple times at the deadline. You know, he's a depth piece, a veteran guy, lefty. I think all of those three starters are in play. I think their bullpen. They have David Bednar. They had the kid Dennis Santana at the back end. Those two guys are, you know, there's so going back to our story earlier, their owner, the Pirates owner, would not have let their current GM Ben Cherington trade David Bednar last year. He's a local
Wow.
guy. He's from Pittsburgh, and they had him under contract. Like he was a fan favorite. He didn't let him trade him. So apparently he's going to allow that. We'll see, you know, but he'll let him do that this year. And so I think those are a couple of guys that I've heard their names. You mentioned Reynolds; he's another guy. You know, Hayes, because you know teams need a third baseman. He just hasn't you know clicked offensively. He's a good defender, and there's some money on that contract. So I don't think he's going to be available. But yeah, I think they are going to move a couple of those for some offensive pieces. It seems like.
Yeah. Well, I guess time will tell.